There is absolutely a racial component to this story on a couple of fronts. First, the kinds of soft on crime policies advocated by the left following the George Floyd riots are absolutely why Brown was not in prison. In the name of racial equity, many cities and states decided that violent, repeat offenders should be released from prison and left to roam freely in our communities. Brown himself is clearly heard on the tape saying, I got that white girl. You can listen to it for yourself.
Welcome back, everybody. We're here doing a little follow up to the horrific murder of Iryna Zarutska, the Ukrainian refugee that was here seeking true asylum, only to be murdered brutally by a black man on a subway who had been arrested 14 times, that was out there looking to murder a white girl. His words, not mine. Gotta call it what it is. Scott Jennings is going to give his take. I guess he's done taking a day. He took a day off from whooping on CNN panelists. So let's hear what Scott's got to say.
Let's get to the news. And we're going to start with this horrific murder in Charlotte, North Carolina. The national media has finally been shamed into covering it, but they are doing what you would expect them to do, somehow turning this into a story about Republicans and Trump and conservatives and MAGA, more than a story about the truth, which is that a violent repeat offender who should not have been on the streets murdered an innocent girl in North Carolina. What are the facts? An African American man named DeCarlos Brown Jr. did the killing here. He's been arrested at least 14 times on charges like felony larceny, armed robbery, assault, and making threats. In 2014, he served a 5-year sentence for armed robbery and was released in 2020, but 5 months later, he was arrested again for allegedly assaulting his sister in her Charlotte home. He had a brush with the law earlier this year. He was not jailed. A magistrate judge of some sort let him go, free to roam. There is absolutely a
At what point are these judges going to be held accountable for their actions? If you're a grocer at a store and you price something wrong and the store loses out on a grand of profit, you're probably going to be fired. But these judges continuously let these career criminals out, and then they go off to murder innocent people, rob, beat. Something needs to be done at a federal level to these judges.
racial component to this story on a couple of fronts. First, the kinds of soft on crime policies advocated by the left following the George Floyd riots are absolutely why Brown was not in prison. In the name of racial equity, many cities and states decided that violent, repeat offenders should be released from prison and left to roam freely in our communities. Brown himself is clearly heard on the tape saying, I got that white girl. You can listen to it for yourself. Sounds like racial animus to me.
It is. Here's the truth. Here's the ugly truth. A lot of black people hate white people. So when you're told, judge somebody by their content or their character, that ain't going back to you. That's a one-way street.
And second, let me also say that the media narrative here is important. Everyone within the sound of my voice knows that had the roles been reversed and a white male, a violent repeat offender white male, had murdered in cold blood a black or brown female on a train, every national news organization would be broadcasting live from Charlotte 24/7. Every national news organization would be there. There would be public uprisings. There would
Let me ask you this. I'm not a lawyer, and I hope a lawyer sees this. Where are the white lawyers that jump up every time something like this happens and gets a national attention? Where are the Benjamin Crumps or the Al Sharptons of the white race that's going to defend us legally and bring it to a national level. Why don't we have that? I know there's plenty of white lawyers out there. What's the problem? Do I got to get a law degree? Don't let this outfit fool you.
There'd be speeches about white supremacy. It would all be used as a vehicle for sweeping public policy changes. You know it, and I know it. And every honest person knows why the national media ignored this story and now portrays it in a way that sidesteps the terrible truths that we have learned.
Here's the reason why. Here's the reason why black crime doesn't get reported. Black people vote Democrat. That's the reason. Black people are more dependent on the government. They are a dependent voter. They need the state. Largely, they need Democrats. CNN, MSNBC, PBS, the dang radio station Trump just shut down, that was also sponsored by the state. They all advocate for these criminals because that is their voter base. It's that simple. We need them. You need us. We need you.
And I'll tell you one more thing. The victim here, Iryna Zarutska, is simply the wrong kind of immigrant. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, she's white. She's from Ukraine, not Mexico or Central or South America. The national media narrative right now is that a white supremacist administration is brutalizing illegal immigrants simply because they are brown. That's the narrative. You hear it every night. And yet, in this case, a legal immigrant to this country, a white immigrant, was brutalized and murdered by a violent African American male. This does not fit the narrative. And when things don't fit the narrative, they are disappeared from reality by our media. The same goes for the shooting in Minneapolis a couple of weeks ago. That's gone from the news. You'll never hear about it again. Same thing from Nashville a couple of years ago. That came and went like it never happened because the shooters were trans.
And this is why we have to forever be indebted to Mr. Musk for purchasing X. Who would have saw this video? Nobody would have saw this video. It might have made a little small portion in the people who passed away section on the local newspapers. That's it. This would have gotten no attention. And it's scary to think before Elon got X, how many of these cases went unreported. Now we're seeing about them cooking the books. They're labeling all these black violent criminals as white people. As if the stats were already not in their favor. We're finding out you've been blaming us for that too. Black dude murders a white girl, murders a white family. They call him a white guy. Same with the FBI stats. Mr. Patel, I hope you're looking at that.
And they shot up Christian schools. Doesn't fit the narrative. Time to disappear. Unless the criminal and the victim fit the preferred cultural narrative, the story is treated as though it did not happen. Or in the case of North Carolina, when ignoring it is no longer an option, the narrative always becomes, isn't it terrible that conservatives noticed something that happened?
That's right.
When a story doesn't fit the narrative, the pivot is, well, Republicans, they did a bad thing here by noticing, don't you know? The radicalism must be preserved at all costs. The soft on crime policies must be preserved. The left, the radical, progressive, Marxist, anti American left can never, ever, ever be portrayed as being in the wrong. Never. If you want to know why our national media is held in such low esteem, this is it. The sins of omission, the sins of promoting narratives over reality, the sins of distorting the truth. But in this era, the era of video cameras being ubiquitous in our society, and all of us having access to social media, it has gotten nearly impossible for the media to get away with this any longer. And they just don't realize it yet that nobody is buying the narratives anymore. By the way,
Shout out to Scott Jennings because he's essentially talking shit about his own bosses, at least calling them out. And honestly, that's one thing. The only praise I could give CNN is that they hired a guy like Scott, who's usually 4 or 5 versus one at that round table, holding it down like a beast. If you made it this far, like and subscribe if you appreciate it. We'll see you next time.